Some people work hard their entire lives and still feel like they're losing. Not because of bad luck, not because they don't make enough, but because of things so normal, so accepted, so woven into everyday life that nobody ever thinks to question them. These aren't dramatic mistakes. Nobody sits down one day and decides to be financially fragile. It happens quietly, through habits that feel reasonable, through choices that feel responsible, through behavior that almost everyone around you is also doing. And that's exactly what makes this so difficult to see. My name is Garrett, and I've been looking at this pattern for a while now. The gap between people who earn decent money and people who actually feel financially secure. Those two things, surprisingly, don't always overlap. What I kept finding wasn't reckless spending or obvious mistakes. It was quiet habits, normalized ones, the kind that nobody warns you about because they look totally fine from the outside. Today, I want to walk through 7 of them, and more importantly, show you how they work beneath the surface. Because once you see the mechanism, you can't unsee it. Here's what most financial advice gets wrong. It assumes the problem is discipline, that if you just tried harder, said no more often, or had more willpower, everything would click. But that framing quietly puts all the blame on the individual and completely ignores the environment that shapes behavior in the first place. The truth is, a lot of financially damaging habits are socially reinforced. They're things your parents did, things your colleagues normalize, things that feel like adulting, or treating yourself well, or just being practical. That's what makes them dangerous, not because they're evil, but because they blend in. Habit 1. Spending to the edge of your income. There's an invisible rule most people absorb without realizing it, that your lifestyle should roughly match what you earn. Get a raise, upgrade your apartment, land a better job, upgrade your car. Income goes up, expenses follow. This is what economists call lifestyle creep, and it's almost entirely automatic. The problem isn't spending more when you earn more. The problem is that there's never a gap left between income and expenses, and without that gap, there's nothing to build with. Wealth doesn't come from earning a lot. It comes from consistently keeping a portion of what you earn. The person making $60,000 who keeps $800 a month is building something real. The person making $120,000 who spends $119,000 is financially standing still. Habit 2. Using debt for things that don't appreciate. This one is subtle because not all debt is the same. Debt on an asset that grows, like certain property, has a different character than debt on something that immediately loses value. But most consumer debt isn't on appreciating assets. It's on phones, clothes, holidays, furniture, and restaurant meals paid for later. The item depreciates, the interest keeps accumulating, and the brain, in the moment, doesn't register the full cost because the discomfort is delayed. Studies in behavioral economics consistently show that people spend significantly more when they pay with credit instead of cash. The pain of payment is muted. The decision feels lighter than it actually is. And here's what makes it insidious. It doesn't feel like a habit. It feels like access, like opportunity. But over years, the interest quietly erodes a significant portion of income that could have been redirected towards something that grows. Habit 3. Having no relationship with your own money. Most people don't actually know where their money goes, not in a detailed way. They have a rough sense: bills, rent, groceries, some going out. But if you asked them, on a Thursday in the 3rd week of the month, exactly how much they've spent so far and on what, they'd struggle to answer. This isn't laziness. It's just that the system isn't designed for awareness. Card payments are invisible. Subscriptions auto-renew. Food delivery apps make it feel like nothing. And so money moves out of accounts with almost no conscious acknowledgement. Here's what happens psychologically when you don't track. You tend to spend more because you have no reference point telling you to slow down. You only notice money when it's almost gone. And by then, the decisions have already been made. Even rough awareness, checking your accounts once a week, knowing your rough monthly total, changes behavior. Not because it creates discipline through force, but because it creates friction before the decision, not after. Habit 4. Treating savings like what's left over. Most people save the remainder, whatever's left at the end of the month, after expenses, after dinners out, after the impulse purchases. That's what gets saved. Some months it's something, some months it's nothing, and the average stays frustratingly low. The inversion of this habit is simple but powerful. Save first, then live on what remains. Automate a transfer out of your account on payday before the money integrates into your mental available pool, even a small amount. The behavior change isn't dramatic, but the results over time are. The psychology behind this is well documented. When money is already spent in your mind, already allocated somewhere, you naturally spend less of what's left. You adapt to the constraint. It doesn't feel as painful as it sounds in theory. Habit 5. Prioritizing looking stable over being stable. This one is uncomfortable to talk about honestly. There's a version of financial weakness that looks completely fine. A nice apartment, a decent car, branded clothes, regular holidays. The external signals of financial health are all there, but behind the scenes, the savings account is shallow. The emergency fund doesn't exist, and one unexpected expense would cause real stress. Modern life creates enormous pressure to perform prosperity. Social media amplifies it. And so people spend energy and money maintaining an image of stability rather than building actual stability. The appearance comes first. The foundation gets deferred. The cruelest part is that the people most caught in this cycle often don't recognize it, because everyone around them is doing the same thing. When the behavior is universal, it stops feeling like a choice. It feels like reality. Habit 6. No emergency fund. So every emergency becomes debt. Life has a rhythm. Things break. Health issues come up. Contracts end. Cars need repairs. These aren't anomalies. They're predictable parts of living. But if you have no buffer when they arrive, the only available response is usually to borrow. Credit card, personal loan, something. And now a predictable life event has become a financial setback with interest attached. Research suggests a significant majority of people couldn't cover a $1,000 emergency without borrowing. That's not a reflection of character. It's a reflection of a system that makes it easy to spend and doesn't build in any structural encouragement to set money aside. The function of an emergency fund isn't really about the money. It's about the decision-making clarity it creates. When you have a buffer, you make different choices. You're not negotiating from desperation. You don't take the wrong job, sign the wrong contract, or make a rushed financial decision just because your back is against the wall. Stability isn't just financial, it's psychological, and it changes the quality of your choices. Habit 7. Waiting for a bigger income to start investing. This is the most quietly devastating one. I'll start investing when I earn more. It sounds rational, responsible even, like you're being realistic about your current situation. But what this belief quietly does is move the starting line further away, indefinitely. The starting income never feels like enough. When you get to that number, life has expanded to fill it. And suddenly the new number that feels like enough is slightly higher again. And so the beginning keeps getting postponed. What compound growth actually requires isn't a large amount. It requires time, even small amounts. Invested consistently and left alone, produce meaningful outcomes over decades. A person who starts at 25 with a modest amount doesn't need to contribute more than someone who starts at 35 to end up significantly ahead. The mathematical reality of this is stark. Delaying by 10 years doesn't set you back 10 years. It can cut your eventual outcome by nearly half. Because the growth that gets lost in those early years was the growth that would have compounded the longest. Here's what connects all 7 of these habits. None of them are about money in the simple sense. They're all about behavior shaped by environment, by emotion, by social pressure, by a lack of structural support. Spending to the edge of income happens because lifestyle expansion feels natural. Debt accumulates because payment pain is removed. No tracking happens because the system doesn't prompt it. Saving last happens because automation was never set up. Performing prosperity happens because visibility is rewarded. No emergency fund exists because saving isn't celebrated. And investing gets delayed because the starting line always feels a step away. These aren't moral failures. They're design failures. And the moment you see them as design problems, they become solvable. Because design can be changed. None of this requires dramatic life overhauls. Start with the simplest possible intervention, one automated transfer, set up once, moving a small percentage of your income somewhere separate the moment payday arrives. Even 5%. Even less. The amount matters less than the habit of separating. Then once a week, spend 10 minutes just looking at where your money went. Not to judge it, just to know. Awareness alone shifts behavior more than most people expect. If you carry consumer debt, identify the one with the highest interest rate and put any available extra payment there first. Not the smallest balance, not the most emotionally painful one, the highest rate. Because that's where the silent cost is highest. And if you haven't invested anything yet, start now. Not when you earn more, not next month, now. Even a small amount. In an index fund, left alone. The specific amount is less important than breaking the psychological inertia of not starting. None of these require perfection. They require consistency. Small, repeated actions in the right direction, over time, quietly change everything. Financial weakness rarely announces itself. It doesn't look like crisis. It doesn't feel like failure. Most of the time, it looks like a totally normal life. One that works fine right now but has very little cushion underneath it. And that's what makes these 7 habits so worth understanding. Not because they're shameful, but because they're invisible. And invisible things can only be changed once they've been seen. You're not bad with money. You just inherited a set of habits that were never really examined. Most people never examine them at all. Now you have.